This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Empower.
Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Getting Personal with Pierre Poilievre. Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Full Comment Podcast. I'm Brian Lilly, your host. And over this past weekend, I was given the opportunity to sit down and have a long discussion with the Conservative leader seeking to become Canada's next Prime Minister. We were 3 weeks into the election, the fourth week about to start. Polls were not as favorable as they are now, but not horrible for the Conservatives. A lot of chatter, a lot of personal items on the agenda, and of course, the ever-present Donald Trump. It's not easy to get politicians at times to talk about themselves in a very personal way, but I did give it my best effort with Poilievre. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Pierre, good to see you again. Say, Brian, coming by. Thanks for having. Let's just jump right to the sticky question of this election. The guy that doesn't live here in Canada, that's wreaking havoc in Canada. Let's say April 28th comes, the voters put their faith in you and your Conservative team across the country. How do you handle Donald Trump, and how is your way of handling him different than Mark Carney? Do you call him right away? Do you start a negotiation? What do you do?
Well, what I would propose to him is suspend the tariffs and quickly renegotiate CUSMA, because this state of like random, sudden waves of new tariffs is totally destabilizing both our economies. It's sending stock markets into a tailspin. And I would say to him, look, it's not in your interest to have this insanity. You think that the current arrangement is unfair. Well, let's negotiate a solution that ends the tariffs, protects our sovereignty, in exchange for which what we can offer is a much stronger Canadian military to carry our weight on the continent. Now, will he accept that? I don't know. He has been very unpredictable. Mr. Carney had a phone call with him and came out of it saying it was productive and that he made progress. And then 4 or 5 days later, Trump hit us with even more tariffs. And then the other day, Trump paused tariffs on almost every country in the world except Canada. So I kind of wonder what progress Mr. Carney is bragging about. I'm not blaming him for the tariffs, of course, but I am pointing out that his singular election promise is that he can, quote unquote, handle Donald Trump. So far, there's no evidence of that. What we need to do is focus on what we can control, which is to say, reverse all of the disastrous policies that Carney advised Justin Trudeau to put in place and that all the current Liberal MPs running for re-election helped impose. Those policies need to go. That is to say, we need to repeal the anti-energy law, C-69, repeal the industrial carbon tax, the energy cap, quickly approve LNG plants, factories, pipelines, etc.
I heard you say that, but how would you be different than Mark Carney saying, I'm going to call him up right away? I mean, do they take a different approach to trade negotiations? Or if you remember back to when we renegotiated NAFTA into CUSMA, the Americans published this long list of their objectives, required to by law. It wasn't Donald Trump being, really nice to anybody. They're required by law.
Right.
And it was all about better access for their producers, better access for their manufacturers, better access to our markets and the Mexican markets. Ours was, we wanted gendered language and environmental changes. There was nothing in what the Trudeau government put out that said we need better access. I mean, at the same time, we renegotiated, and we've been taken to the trade panel several times by the Americans saying you're not following the rule of the agreement. So there's obviously problems with the agreement. How would you be different?
Well, different than that, I would obviously put on the table things that the Canadians want and need, like we need an end to the softwood tariffs. It's crazy that we're being hit with 15% tariffs. By the way, those weren't imposed by Trump. Those were imposed by Biden. And Harper got them off 80 days after he became prime minister. I want an end to the softwood tariffs. Second, we need an end to Buy America for Canadian goods. We had an exemption to Buy America, again, under Harper. That allowed Canadian construction companies to sell their goods to American governments. That's the second thing I'd like to have. And I also want to, I want to make sure that anything we offer the Americans, particularly on national defense, are things we can pull back in the event that Trump goes back on his word. So if he suddenly hits us with a bunch of new unexpected tariffs out of nowhere, well, then we're going to pull back on the things that we've committed to do for him. One of the failures of the CUSMA negotiation and deal is the Liberals did not bake in any long-term leverage to say to the Americans, look, if you go back on CUSMA, well, we're going to withdraw these 4 or 5 things we've offered you. That's necessary because it's the only way to dissuade Trump from hitting us again in an unprovoked way like he did this time.
Now, you've been getting some criticism lately. I know you've answered this in your news conferences, but Corey Tenek, a guy that you know well, you've known for a long time, being very critical of the campaign. I've heard you say why you're going to continue doing this. What's it like getting harsh criticism from someone that you've known so long that has been a friend?
Well, it's life in the big city. I focus on, I think the criticism I'm getting is that I'm focusing too much on the cost of living and on crime and those issues that affect people's daily lives. I'm not changing. The reality is that I meet every day. I meet single moms who can't feed their kids. I meet seniors who tell me they don't know how their savings are gonna run out before their days run out. I meet the young couples that are in their 30s who can't have kids because the Liberals have doubled the cost of housing. And, the Liberals and their friends in the lobbying world want Canadians to forget about that. Their entire election strategy is to pretend the last 10 years never happened.
But there is a big chunk of the population that is very anxious right now.
Yeah.
I don't particularly understand how anxious some people are because this too shall pass and countries outlive governments, good and bad. But, I mean, speak to those people that are worried. I mean, do you have anything to say that would make them say, okay, I'll go back to considering Pierre Poilievre and Conservatives?
Well, if you are anxious about the Canada-U.S. situation, I understand that. It's the elephant next door. They're the biggest military and economic superpower the world has ever seen, and the president has been very unfriendly to us with his words and deeds these last 100 days. But we will overcome this. I have no doubt about it. I have no doubt that we will stabilize the relationship, get back to trading while protecting our sovereignty and our independence. I think, frankly, what's going to happen is that midterms are going to start to get closer, and congressmen and senators are going to say to the president, okay, our factories are under pressure because of these crazy tariffs. Our consumers are paying higher prices. Can you please stop fighting with Canada? It's making our people poorer. And I think we can get a deal that will bring peace and calm, and we can get back to focusing on the problems that were homemade. Like, before Donald Trump was reelected, we had a liberal housing crisis. We had 2 million people lined up at food banks every single month. We had people paying more in taxes than they're spending on food, clothing, and shelter combined. And those problems are going to survive after Donald Trump unless we take a dramatically different action to fix them. Mark Carney represents more of the same. It's going to be the same Liberal MPs, same Liberal ministers, same Liberal promises, and you'll get the same Liberal result. We need a change, and I'm the only change in town. That's just the reality. If you want to lower the tax burden, unleash our resources, greenlight home building so our youth can afford a place to live, lock up the criminals to bring home safety, you got one option in this election, and it's Conservative.
The stock market didn't just tank, oil prices tanked. I was speaking with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith the other day at the Canada Strawman Free networking event. Interviewed her on stage, and she told me that the price of oil dropping the way it has, it's gone down. At that point, it's gone down about 15.5% on West Texas Intermediate. Western Canadian Select, which is what we sell at, always at a 15 to 20% discount, had dropped 20% since Donald Trump's Liberation Day. She said that'll cost her a $5 billion deficit is their estimate if it continues. It's going to have huge economic impact on this country, won't it?
Very much so, and the fact that we are so dependent on the Americans is the reason why Canadian oil is so much cheaper than American or than the world price. So Western Canada Select is a discount that we get for our product because we can't get it anywhere else in the world.
We send some along Trans Mountain, a very small amount, but most of it it's to the States.
Yes, it's a very small fraction. Even some of the Trans Mountain oil actually does transit down the west coast to California. So it is, Trudeau killed the Northern Gateway pipeline, which would have taken 500,000 barrels from Alberta through BC off to Asia. Mark Carney testified in favor of killing that pipeline.
I think you may have quizzed him on that.
I did quiz him on it. And the Liberals effectively killed the Energy East pipeline, which would have taken 1 million barrels to New Brunswick from Alberta. Oil that would have displaced Putin's oil in Europe and probably helped defund him. Then they passed C-69, the anti-development law that Carney says he wants to keep in place. And he wants to keep the energy cap and an industrial carbon tax. So when it comes to energy independence, Trudeau and Carney are identical. And the choice in the election after this lost Liberal decade of keeping our wealth in the ground is whether you want to give them a fourth term or whether you want a change with a new government that will repeal these anti-energy laws and get our goods to market.
Have you noticed that he doesn't really use the words oil, gas,
pipelines?
Yes. So he talks about conventional energy and energy infrastructure. When I look at the investments that he made as chair and vice chair of Brookfield Asset Management over the last bunch of years, I quite frankly think that his plan is not to increase Canadian conventional energy, as he calls it, but to make us a green energy superpower. I don't know, with hydrogen or hydro.
Those are the same promises that Liberals made for a whole decade. Remember, we were going to be selling boatloads of hydrogen off to Europe instead of natural gas. How many shipments of Canadian hydrogen are being sold to Germany after all these years of these promises? Billions, tens of billions of dollars of subsidies to supposedly invent these industries from scratch, paid for by taxpayers. And what is the result after a decade of the Liberals in power? $500 billion investment is left to the South. We're more dependent on the Americans than ever before. We've had the worst growth in the G7. This Liberal experiment has failed. And Mark Carney will not change it. He fundamentally agrees with everything Trudeau did. He advised him to do it. And he will keep doing it if he gets the chance. If you want a change to unleash our resources, there's only one party that will do it, and it's the Conservatives.
I got an email from a reader the other day saying to me that he fully supports it and has for a while, but he's on a Facebook group that is filled with seniors in his community. And he said one of the reasons that he keeps reading as he tries to convince them on why to vote for you instead of Carney and the Liberals is that they say, but he'll cut our pensions. He's going to cut our OAS. He's going to cut our CPP. He's going to cut our GIC.
That's a total lie. We're going to protect OAS, GIS, and the CPP, keep the age of retirement at 65. We've also said we'll allow working seniors who choose to keep a job to earn $34,000 tax-free. That's $10,000 more than right now, which is reduces the penalties that exist for seniors who go into the workforce. We're also going to allow seniors who choose to keep their RRSPs growing, to do that for another 2 years.
You announced that recently, and that was in response to the...
Actually, it was prescient. We announced it even before that, but then the stock market thing happened, and I said, this will work out very well, because it gives seniors the extra couple of years.
Because I remember the Harper government doing something similar to that in 2008, 2009, saying, look, you don't have to withdraw down on your retirement savings. Well, you have some time for the stock market to recover.
That's right.
So that you're not, hit with, I forget how bad it was back then, but we survived.
That's right, 20 or 30%. So at the time, the markets crashed way back then, and we didn't want to force seniors to withdraw with those losses. They let them to keep it longer. They recover their losses, and that's what I'm saying now. But even beyond that, I think that those seniors who decide, because they're I'm in great health, I'm going to be around for a long time, I want to grow my nest egg tax-free a little longer, great, I'll have another 2 years to do it.
Okay. In terms of perceptions of it, one of the other things that I hear from folks in that boomer demographic, older demographic, is he's mean. I don't like him. You see, you're smiling.
Have I ever been mean to you?
No. And this is what I say. That's not the guy I've known for the last 20 years. I said, this is a guy that laughs more than he frowns. So, talk about your personality, but loosen up a little bit here. Be like, come on.
Yeah, at first you were trying to get me drinking. Now,
I had somebody else. Okay,
whatever.
I did offer. Do you want a beer for the start? He said no.
I don't drink as much as I did when I was younger. I'm going to be too old for that. No, listen. I think the challenge is that I do get upset with the way that politicians have ruined people's lives. It upsets me when I meet someone who can't afford a home because of political decisions, or a small business owner. I feel very frustrated by the damage that this Liberal government, but other politicians, have done to the people who actually do the work in this country. And I think sometimes that frustration comes across as aggressive. But it actually, what I think I need to make people understand is that it comes from a place of care for the people that I'm fighting for. And I think I need to put more emphasis on the things I'm fighting for rather than the bad decisions that I'm fighting against. And so that's one of the challenges to communicate.
Lead with empathy?
I mean, just tell people why you're doing it. What you're fighting for. And what I'm fighting for is just to bring back the promise the country had, that I got when I was a kid. You can work hard, you get a great life. And that's what it was in Canada before the Liberals were in power.
When I first met you as a young whippersnapper trying to get elected the first time, you're 23, 24? I think you were doing this because, you were into politics, and it's like, this would be a cool job. That's not why people run to be prime minister. I mean, you don't look and say, that'd be a cool job, let's go do that.
Yeah, but I shouldn't run to because it was a cool job. I believed in actually the same things back then that I believe in now.
And what drives you to say, I want to be the guy, I want to be the person leading the country? That's what makes me want to get up in the morning.
Well, it's like I'm saying, I was given a great opportunity in this country. I came from very, very humble beginnings. I started off the adopted son of two school teachers and was able to make it to this place. My wife came here as a refugee from Venezuela, and look how far she's come. There's nowhere else where this story is possible. That was the promise the country made all of us, but that promise is broken right now. Young people don't feel that way. You walk around the streets and you meet the youth. They say, I'm giving it everything I have. I'm not getting anywhere. I don't see any hope of ever owning a home or having kids. Many are considering just leaving the country for better opportunities elsewhere. On the other end of the age spectrum, I meet seniors who are worried they're going to be evicted from their apartment because rent's going up so much. And I just see our economy so weak that it's not going to give my kids the opportunity that existed when I was 20, 25. So I want to bring back that promise. And I know how to do it. I know if we get back to the basics, the common sense ideas that used to guide the country, that we can bring back the promise for everybody. And that's why I'm running.
You mentioned your wife Anna, her coming here as a refugee. My parents came here as immigrants, 1968, and back then it took about 5 years for new immigrants to catch up to the Canadian standard of living. My understanding, it is much longer now. Within 5 years, they'd saved up to buy a house. You can't do that now. My oldest son left Ottawa a couple of years ago to move to New Brunswick. Why? Better opportunities in terms of hopefully one day being able to buy a house. Kids are leaving places like Ontario, not just Toronto, where everything is expensive and young families are just saying, let's pack it in and move elsewhere. People are leaving mid-sized cities like Ottawa and saying it's too much. I've asked you already to speak to the older voters. Speak to those younger ones that just don't feel like there is that hope of being able to buy a house. I can't think of any young person I know in Toronto without the bank of mom and dad being involved, being able to buy a house. I'll give you one more quick example. Young guy I met, Karthik, came to Canada about a decade ago. He makes very good money. He says, why should I be making high six-figure income and I can't buy a place to live?
It's nuts. It's nuts. When my wife was in her early 20s, she had a good job, but she was able to save up with her own money and get a down payment on a nice detached townhouse an attached townhouse in Orleans, East End of the nation's capital. That's how it was. It's funny. I shouldn't have sold it. I sold my condo in Barrhaven, 35 minutes from Parliament Hill in 2015. It went for $219,000 or something like that. $219,000. It's unbelievable.
How much would that be going for now?
It hurts too much to fat. I'd be a much richer man if I had rented it out. But the point is that housing was cheap 10 years ago in Canada. And it should be cheap. This should be the cheapest place in the world to own a home because we've got so much dirt to build on. We got more land per capita than any country in the G7.
I hear we have lumber.
We got lumber, we got workers, we have companies to build it. What we don't have is permits. We have high taxes and government delays that block home building. The majority of the cost of a new home is government. It's delays, permits, zoning, consultants, lawyers, accountants, lobbyists, all that.
Though a lot of that is local.
Some of it is.
And I'll give a quick example from here. You mentioned Orleans. Spoke to one developer, and developers in Ottawa, as in most major cities, they work in all parts of the city. So this developer had put in plans to the city of Ottawa for a subdivision in Orleans. They wanted to replicate the same houses with the same plans, with similar street design in a different part of plot of land in the West End. We have to review all of your house designs once again. They'd already been approved by the city, but nothing that you submitted before, even though you're replicating it,
that's unbelievable,
is valid.
And 30% of the cost of that home will be direct taxes: sales tax, land transfer tax, development charges. So here's my plan. First of all, we're going to axe the GST, the sales tax on new homes. Second, I'm going to pay the municipalities half the cost of cutting their taxes. So up to $50,000. So you combine getting rid of the GST on new homes with getting the municipalities to cut their taxes by up to $50,000. That's $100,000 in taxes that we can take off home building costs. On top of that, I'm going to be linking federal infrastructure dollars for cities to the number of homes they allow to be built, to incentivize them, to speed up permits, free up land, cut the development.
Explain that a little bit.
Well,
that's been described by your opponents as you're going to punish cities.
Well, there's going to be a carrot and a stick. The carrot is that those that build more will get more infrastructure money. Those that build less will get less. And so that will incentivize them to free up the permits and speed up the approvals to get the homes built, to go down and say to the bureaucracy in the bowels of the city of Ottawa, you can't force this guy to submit a new set of designs, even though he's already done it once before. The only way you're going to get these permits going is if you incentivize the municipalities with money for homes, money for doors, pay them the way realtors and the way realtors and home builders get paid for each door. And that's how you'll get them out of the way. We're also going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings, thousands of acres of federal land to build new homes. And finally, back 350,000 training spots at mostly union training halls to get the young tradespeople who can build the homes in the future.
I listened to Mark Carney's housing announcement. I went through the news release. I went through the backgrounder. There was a word missing. Ownership.
Right.
There is a difference in views. And I see this, I cover all levels of politics, city hall, provincial, federal. And there is a view among some that, well, we don't need to have home ownership. We just have, and Justin Trudeau was putting that forward, and it looks like Mark Carney's carrying that on. You'll rent from the government, or the government will own the land and lease it to you. And there's also this idea of we don't need single-family homes. Everyone can live in a box in the sky. Look, I live in a box in the sky now in downtown Toronto. I quite like it. It's great. But if you're raising 1, 2, 3 kids, at a certain point, that becomes a pain. That you want a yard for the kids. You want a place for them to play. How are you different from what you've seen Mark Carney put forward, what the progressives at the provincial and municipal level push of this idea of, well, we'll put everyone in boxes and you can rent forever?
Well, different in every way on housing. Carney wants to continue along with the same policies that Justin Trudeau brought in that doubled housing costs. Look at the result. The results speak for themselves. They promised government was going to get, quote unquote, back into the business of housing in 2017. It's now been 8 years. And what has happened? The cost of everything has doubled. Rent has doubled, mortgage payments has doubled, and the needed down payment for a home, they've all doubled. We have the most expensive real estate in the world after a decade of the Liberals. By continuing with the same policy, you're going to get the same result. You vote the same, you get the same. Carney is actually even more extreme than Trudeau in this idea. He wants to create some kind of a grand government corporation that's going to build prefab homes and rent them to you. And no one will ever be able to own a house under that model. How do you build up equity for your retirement? How do you build up your biggest asset when you're a permanent renter? And how do you start a family if you can't have a yard or a driveway where they can play street hockey and where they can let the dog outside? The beautiful suburban life that Canadians want requires single-family homes. So governments don't build homes. The good news is they don't have to. We have lots of builders. We have lots of land. What we need is the government to get out of the way, get the taxes and the red tape off so that they can build.
I forget the name that he gave to the new group, but it's basically creating a new bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Because the old bureaucracy that is in charge of this, Canada Mortgage and Housing, isn't doing a very good job. So
he's going to give it a new name.
That bureaucracy isn't good enough, so let's have a different bureaucracy.
That's right, and that's what they're going to build, is bureaucracy. We don't need to build more bureaucracy. We actually need to build more homes, and we can do that. We will. Why is it that housing in the United States, where they have 8 times the people housed on a smaller land mass, is 25 to 45% cheaper than it is here in Canada? Why is it that you can buy a house for half the cost in the American side of Niagara than on the Canadian side? The answer is that you can get things built there, and you don't get taxed through the nose for doing it. We need to do the same. That's what we used to do in Canada. That's why housing was always cheap in this country, and we will make it affordable again.
I just get depressed when I look at what's for sale in my building, and I say, I could actually buy a mansion in Texas or a castle in Scotland. Literally.
Then it is cheaper to buy a castle in Sweden or Scotland than it is to buy a single-family home in Kitchener today.
That's utterly
mind-boggling.
In terms of...
But it's not going to change if we re-elect the Liberals. They will be exactly the same policy. We need a change.
The Liberals have put forward that they're big on affordability because they brought in dental care, they're starting pharmacare, and childcare, all of which they say you will cut. Again, I think they just claim that you'll cut everything. But on childcare, when you've got young kids, that can be a big expense. Sure, you want to be able to buy a house, but what about the kids if you have to go to work?
That's exactly right. And ironically, the the number of families without childcare has actually grown since the Liberals made this promise. The number of spaces has actually shrunk. And the reason is that they've imposed so much bureaucracy on the providers. They want to limit private sector providers. They want to limit it to 9 to 5 so you don't help the shift worker and the weekend worker. They want to exclude home-based daycares. And so by excluding all these options and by putting so much of the money into bureaucracy, the good intention of affordable childcare has not played out for enough families. So what we're saying is, sure, keep the childcare program, but provide the freedom and flexibility to provinces, providers, and parents to choose the type of childcare they want, whether it's private or public, whether it's home-based or institutional-based. All of those decisions should be left to the freedom of parents, providers, and provinces so that we can help more kids and our money goes further.
Well, I used to work morning radio. There was a single parent that I worked with. He had to drop his kids off. Morning radio, you start at 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yes, that's right.
In the morning. He'd have to drop his kids off on the way in. There was, thankfully, a child care center that was there for shift workers.
Wow.
But only one in all of Ottawa.
Jeez. Does a kid wake up at that time?
Yes.
Must have been a really raucous kid at 4 in the morning.
Well, I'd be really grouchy. 4 in the morning was why I don't do morning radio anymore. So you would keep the program in place, but you would alter how the provinces...
Well, just give the freedom. The provinces can support more options, support community-based, home-based, and other flexible options that serve more parents and have less government restraints, because it's about parents, not politicians.
We were promised a new era of federal-provincial cooperation by the last government. I don't know what Mark Carney will be like on that issue, but instead what we've had is fractured national unity. I'm not sure if you saw the Angus Reid poll that came out recently on would you vote to make your province independent? Mark Carney Liberals win. 30% in Alberta said yes. 30% in Quebec said yes. 33% in Saskatchewan said yes. So there is a real sense in this country. I go to Western Canada a lot. There's a lot of anger about the way that they feel they have either been neglected in the agriculture side or oppressed on the side of resource industries. You go to Quebec, looks like the Parti Québécois could be in power in that province again. What would your approach to national unity and working with provinces be?
Oh, we've been too divided for too long. After this lost Liberal decade, the government has attacked Western Canadian industries like oil and gas. They've over-centralized power. They've deliberately tried to turn one region against another in order to exploit divisions to their political advantage. I want to unite Canadians again. There were 10 years ago, there were no separatist movements. The Bloc Québécois and the PQ in Quebec had been wiped off the map. No one in Saskatchewan and Alberta were talking about separation. Wasn't even on the radar. If you had mentioned it back then, people would think you look at you like you had 3 heads. It was very small room, very small, but openly. It shouldn't be. We need to bring our people back together, unite the country. We need to have a small federal government that allows more independence and autonomy for our provinces and maximizes the freedom of our people, unleash all of our industries so that people feel a stake in the economy again. And then, by the way, unite the country around our symbols again. Liberals bashed our symbols, our history, our nation's founder, and then they wonder why there's divisions. Well, the glue that held us together was national pride. I want to bring that back by upholding our symbols, rebuilding statues, putting our heroes back in
Picton, Ontario, there was a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald standing as a lawyer. That's where he started his first law practice.
Okay.
And standing next to a witness box, and you could go and stand in the witness box and get your picture taken with Sir John A. It's great fun. They took that out. They took out a statue in Victoria. They tore it down in Montreal.
Terrible.
And now we're being told, we've gone from we're a horrible country, we need to do all these things. You were never saying that, but the folks that were are now saying elbows up, and we're the greatest country on earth. It was bit of whiplash-inducing.
It is.
In terms of how quickly that happened.
It's amazing how quickly they can reverse themselves on these things. But listen, we've got to unite around our history, be proud of what we have here. There's a reason why so many people want to come to Canada. It's because we have a great history and a great future. So let's unite again.
You have been campaigning with your kids. I saw you making a pizza with Cruz. I believe he got the job and you were fired.
It almost dropped on the ground. I almost lost the pizza.
What's it been like campaigning with the kids?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Valentina loves motion. She loves to be in motion all the time. She does not like standing still or sitting still. And so campaigns move. You're on a bus, it's moving. You're on a plane, it's moving. And when we're moving, she's happy. And so I've enjoyed having her along, and she's been extremely well adapted.
And how old is Valentina?
She's 6 now. She's got some special needs. But she's been very resilient. She's had 1 or 2 nights where it was tough for her to sleep. I think she got too much sugar one day, and then she was bouncing off the wall.
That never bothers kids.
No, it bothers the parents. And then Cruz is Mr. Inquisition. He's always got questions.
Where's he get that from?
That's a good question. He'd be very good in a parliamentary committee one day, maybe. But no, he's a wonderful little boy, and he's been by Daddy's side for most of the campaign. Our in-laws took them back home for a few days to let them rest up and regroup. But it's been a rewarding time, and Anna's been so strong in helping us get through this wild adventure. But we're very blessed as a family to get to do this.
You know, it's got to help you because people think that travel is glamorous, and it is until you do it. And
yeah, I've stayed in all the cheapest hotels in Canada, all the motels and along the highways and byways of small town Canada. I've been in them, and but it's fun. You know, I don't complain. This is Stephen Harper used to say, as soon as you complain, your voters will relieve you of your complaints. So I'm not here whining. I enjoy it.
When I used to be on the campaign trail, I stayed at some very bad, cheap hotels. Yeah, with Stephen Harper when he was leading the Conservatives, and with the Liberal leaders on theirs. You just end up where you end up, and sometimes that's the best thing going. So, in terms of what are you doing for relaxation, for focus? I mean, people have said to me many times over the last while, "Wow, did Pierre Poilievre just get jacked?" Of course, the wackos online saying you're wearing girdles and fake muscles and all this. And I say, no. I used to run into Pierre at Tony Greco's gym, and you obviously kept going, and I stopped. Tony told me he saw you a little while ago. So what are you doing to relax, to focus, to stay in shape? Are you able to get exercise?
I'm not getting as much as I'd like. I try to bang out some push-ups in the morning, maybe a little bit of body weight squats. I did get into the gym yesterday for literally like 10 minutes, just like hit every body part for 1 minute and then leave. It's been tough on the campaign trail. I did keep it up during the parliamentary session before and the lead up to the campaign, but since the writ has been dropped, we get to the hotel so late and we leave so early that there's just no time to do it. But, I'm trying to get in 2-3 workouts a week so I keep my sanity and health. And it's been great to have Anna along with me. She's a great sounding board. And, if you have a bad day or a bad moment, I go to Anna, and she can put it in context and get me through it. So I think having Anna has been the number one help to my mental sanity throughout this adventure.
Well, what she can tell you about how things are looking, I know a lot of people are saying, well, the polls are what they are, and so therefore it's over. Are they getting you down? Are you,
Listen, it's going to come down to whether people want to change. If people want to keep going, if they think the Liberals have done a good job on housing and crime and cost of living, and they want a 4th term, well, then they'll get a 4th term of that. If they think it's time for a change, then I think we've got a good shot. We've got a great platform. We're giving people a chance to keep more of their money with a 15% income tax cut. We're the only guys who got a plan to bring down housing costs. We're the only ones who are going to lock up the criminals and restore street safety to our streets. The only ones that will unleash our resources to strengthen our economy against the Americans. So it's up to Canadians. If they want a 4th term, they'll get one. If they want change, then as I said earlier, I'm it. I'm the only change in town.
You've got some surprising endorsements. Yes, I'm not talking Stephen Harper. It'd be bad if he endorsed somebody else.
Yeah.
Although he did say that both of you have worked for him, and he chose you. But you got the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers. Not a huge union, but a significant one, especially for the resource industry. That's my dad's old union. They have never endorsed federal conservatives.
Right.
You've also got a bunch of police unions and other trade unions.
Yes. Yesterday, the IBEW in Windsor endorsed us. We had the Atlantic Carpenters, the Atlantic Wide Carpenters Union backed us up. The United Association of Plumbers, Steam Fitters, and Pipe Fitters.
Yep.
They endorsed us. That's a very big union. We've gotten very good support from LIUNA. They haven't endorsed our party, but they've endorsed my platform. They're the biggest laborers union in the country, one of the biggest in North America. But then on the flip side, just today, we had some of the most respected business leaders in all of Canada publishing it.
So I've never seen that before, where labor and business are both saying, this is the guy.
What do they have in common? They want to get things built. They want to stop stopping and start starting. And they know that I'm the guy with the plan to change that.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the campaign, including the debates.
Thank you, my friend.
Up against it. Great to see you. Good to see you.
Full Comment is a post-media podcast. This episode was produced by Andre Prue. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Kevin Libin is the executive producer. Please remember to hit subscribe on Full Comment, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Help us out by giving us a rating or leaving us a review. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Brian Lilly.